So Sean Brady just had the most dominant grappling performance we have ever seen against Leon Edwards. He had himself a couple of 10-8 rounds, and he may be the most improved fighter in the UFC. And in this video, I'm going to break down every single fight that took place on this card in the UK. Classic UK card that we had. Hardly any knockouts. Did we even see a single knockout? Every single time we saw a knockdown, it was followed by someone fumbling it by grappling, smudge grappling. Your classic UK boring fight night with a bunch of decisions. The only finishes being submissions. The main event was actually entertaining, but man, this was brutal to watch. Just absolutely brutal to watch. I fell asleep during a couple of the fights, and you know, we're going to get to the great Mick Parkin and Marcin Tybura in a little bit. That's what a lot of you guys want to hear about. A lot of you guys are here for the heavyweight championship of the world. Marcin Tybura defending his freedom belt against Mick Parkin. Slick Mick just getting held back by the newly crowned free man Marcin Tybura. We're going to get into that. We had a lot of... Honestly, Shauna Bannon versus Puja Tomar was the most entertaining fight on the entire card, which just goes to show how shitty this card was. But, oh my goodness, Guram Kutateladze got destroyed by Quay Fernandez. Even Jordan Vucenic got destroyed, the guy that arguably beat Guram. It was literally, you could not make it up. It was like I was watching like one of those montages in a comedy movie with overly dramatic opera music in the background. And I'll talk about what I mean by that, but like, he had Hamzat in his corner. He had Ilia Topuria in his corner. It kept getting worse and worse. It got to the point where Ilia Topuria was doing, a face palm, dude. He was face palming with disappointment for Guram. It was so bad. But first and foremost, we may as well get to the main event. I'm a Sean Brady fan. Honestly, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I used to really dislike Sean Brady's style. I used to call him Pillow Hands Brady, Melatonin Brady, because he always put me to sleep when I used to watch him fight. But dude, Sean Brady is so improved. Not only is his grappling just incredibly dominant and it's getting entertaining to watch, but he's actually piecing people up on the feet. This was a more dominant performance than Belal Muhammad. Now, I did pick Leon Edwards, and a big part of that was, we did see Sean Brady beat an older, washed-up Gilbert Burns. We saw him, beat a fat former heavyweight Kelvin Gastelum. Heavyweight, I mean middleweight. I don't know if he's going to beat Leon Edwards. I mean, Belal beat Leon, but Belal's got that, built differentness. He's super tough. His cardio's different. He TKO'd Brady. It's one thing if you piece up old Gilbert Burns. It's another thing if you're able to piece up Leon Edwards and out-grapple him. I don't know if Brady's going to be able to piece him up. Like, I don't know if he's that tough, but Brady went out there first round and did exactly what Belal did, put the pace on him, put the boxing on Leon Edwards, landed a couple of three pieces, got right in Leon Edwards' face, took his best uppercuts, and then, I think at the end of the round, he may have got Leon down, but he didn't have a lot of success on the ground in the first round. But dude, as soon as it hit the mat in the second, I think there was like a 38 significant strikes for Sean Brady in the second round to 0 for Leon Edwards with like 4.5 minutes of control time. And the dominance, man, like I've not seen someone get made to look like they were that clueless on the ground at such a high level. This is a former champion that used to be known as like, sure, he's predominantly a kickboxer, but he's super well-rounded. He's got great jiu-jitsu, man. He's able to fight the hands. Leon Edwards was known for his hand fighting and the super technical takedown defense and the technical jiu-jitsu. Remember, Leon Edwards took Belal Muhammad's back. Leon Edwards took a round off of Belal on the ground. Okay? He had zero chance to do that to Sean Brady. Dude, I'm actually a big Sean Brady fan. I think that this is the best grappler at welterweight. And I was actually thinking about this after the fight. We always talk about Makhachev moving up and maybe fighting Shavkat, right? But dude, Makhachev versus Sean Brady would just be a sick fight, just to see the grappling. Like, I don't know who would be a better grappler if those two were to go at it. I think that Makhachev may be a better striker, but Sean Brady is that good. This is a guy that was able to beat Craig Jones in a grappling match. I think there was like a weird rule set in that one. But the point that I'm making is, like, Belal did pretty well against Leon, but it wasn't that level of domination, right? Belal took Leon's back, but he wasn't beating him up while he had his back real badly. Sure, there were moments where he was landing ground and pound, but this This was like anytime Leon would get out of a bad position, Sean Brady would swarm him and shut every single alternative down to Leon getting out of those bad spots and put him in a worse spot. And he would beat him up, and he took his back and he was punching him, and freaking, dude, it was nuts, man. I tuned into the Joe Rogan companion, and Rogan looked like he had seen a ghost. Like, they were freaking out. People were feeling bad for Leon. Completely just drained the energy out of the building. Of course, a lot of people rooting for Leon Edwards in the UK. It was dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Again, I've not seen anything like this. We have good grapplers at welterweight. No one this good, right? I mean, yeah, like Bilal 48-47, Leon Edwards. If this had gone to a decision and Sean Brady didn't get the mounted guillotine in the fourth, this could have been a 50-42. All right. Like, it was literally on route to being 4 10-8 rounds in a row. And he won the first round based on the striking with his, gritty inside boxing, taking a page out of Bilal's book. And what this sort of represented to me is, people talk about Leon Edwards and how he did really well against Kamaru. There used to be this idea that Leon can perform really well against these like well-rounded wrestlers, right? But obviously Bilal was the odd man out. But now it's clear to me that this is just the new wave of fighters. And Bilal and Sean Brady were able to do this to Leon where Colby and Usman weren't. And what that goes to show me is that the new wave of fighters is here. And yeah, you could say Leon is a part of that, but this is the new wave of grapplers in the welterweight division. The welterweight division has always been ran and ruled by grapplers for the most part, right? We had GSP, then we had Colby Usman, now we have Brady Bilal, okay? And it keeps getting better. And the one thing I want to say is, I know this may be a little bit of a hot take, because I understand that these days, most people are understanding of the fact that like modern era fighters are way better than guys in the past. But for whatever reason, GSP is omitted from that. Like, dude, I think Usman would have probably beaten GSP. These guys are way better than Usman and guys in Usman's era. I'm just talking about the evolution. Somehow, some way, people think that, we got to the Usmans, but it got worse, and now we're back, and these guys are okay. No, dude, this is a totally new evolution, dude. Leon Edwards is a good grappler. Leon Edwards is a good grappler, man. All right? I just wanted to talk about like that we are seeing a huge jump, because the best grapplers in the sport, we're usually thinking Oliveira, we're usually thinking Makhachev, truly well-rounded grapplers that have wrestling, great submissions. They have it all, great control, okay? But at welterweight, you have slightly less well-rounded grapplers, okay? Like they have really good control, good wrestling, but they may not have the submissions, okay? Or they have submissions, but they may not have the wrestling. We're seeing like grapplers at welterweight now, like Sean Brady. Bilal doesn't have the same finishing ability, of course, but specifically Sean Brady. We're seeing a guy that, like Makhachev, like Oliveira, has everything. Has wrestling and nasty submissions and nasty control and strength on the ground, cardio. This is the most well-rounded grappler I've ever seen at welterweight, okay? So that's why I brought up, how Makhachev and this guy would be a great fight. Just a sick fight. I honestly hope that Brady is the matchup for Makhachev. We've been thinking about Shavkat for a while. JDM might be champ. We'll see. Maybe Bilal, but I think Brady would be the most interesting matchup for Islam Makhachev. Makhachev probably would get him in the striking, but the point that I'm making is the grappling. Yeah, I no longer think Makhachev dominates everybody at welterweight in the grappling. But, man, dude, this is insane what Sean Brady was able to do to him, man. And, he's an active grappler, very active grappler. Back in the day, he used to kind of smudge people into the ground, and he got pieced up by Michael Chiesa. He's just improved so much. Now you see him marching down Leon Edwards, and, hey, Sean Brady's looking like a future champ, right? I mean, I talked about Bilal. Bilal's 37. Sean Brady, 33 years old. Getting better from fight to fight rapidly as boxing has improved tenfold. Now people have to respect his stand-up. He's looking pretty tough these days. His cardio is ridiculously good too. He's incredibly strong for the division. And who can deal with that grappling? Nobody's going to be able to deal with that grappling, dude. Maybe a Bilal Muhammad fight would get interesting because that's really a grit battle. But let's say JDM beats... and the reason why I say that is also because Bilal has really good takedown defense. So I don't know if Sean Brady would get him down, but... He'd be older. But let's say JDM beats Bilal. I'm sorry, man. I know JDM's dangerous, but it's not like he's not like an Ngannou or an Aspinall where you get hit by one punch and you're done. How could you pick against Sean Brady in a matchup like that, you know? And he's the number one contender, which is, it's good. You know, you got to reward that because, of course, you have your Shavkats and your Ian Garys. For a while, for like a 6-month period, there was some time where it was like the champ is Bilal, and then you got Shavkat and Ian Gary. Now, things are getting interesting. Now, JDM and Sean Brady are in the mix. Shavkat and Ian Gary are going to have to take a back seat. You know, Shavkat constantly getting injured, and Shavkat used to have this crazy aura. It's one thing if you build that aura when you're new in the UFC and you're dominating all the cans, right? You're dominating, and you're having a war with Jeff Neal. Sean Brady, during that time period in his career, was not really dominating people that much, but he's building his aura against the top 10. He's building his aura against former champ number one contender Leon Edwards. Sean Brady's only gaining, and he's fighting better and better competition. Like, when you see this sort of trajectory in someone's career, that's when you start saying, well, that could be a future champ. You know, some guys, they dominate on the way up, and then they start having tough fights. Some guys, they're under the radar, then they start dominating, right? Kamaru Usman was similar. Kamaru Usman was a little bit under the radar in the beginning of his career. People were making fun of him, you know, only bringing 30% effort. And then he really started dominating people, like right before he fought for the belt. He completely washed RDA and, you know, had a couple other amazing performances. So this is really Sean Brady's breakout performance. Best grappler in the welterweight division. Not even close. And his striking is where it needs to be. And I think that it's going to continue to get better. Even if his striking still isn't, of course, he's not the best striker in the division. But of course, he's able to make it work because of the threat of the takedown as well. And it's just getting better. But now, if you're thinking about his future opponents, they're going to be looking at this Sean Brady grappling. And they're going to see what he did to Leon. And just the idea of how good he is on the ground is going to make it even easier for Sean Brady to have success on the feet because his opponents are going to be more worried about his grappling than they were before. And before, they were still worried about it. So Sean Brady, nightmare in this division, truly breaking out as the dark horse of this division. I think he's a future champ, and I'm a Sean Brady fan. His grappling is really entertaining to watch. He's after that Bilal Muhammad loss, that really taught him a lesson. He learned... He learned from that. His striking got a lot better. His grit improved as well. Definitely, you know, added some grits. I'm not only talking about mentally. I actually think he started implementing grits in the morning, like Stipe Miocic. So an amazing performance from Sean Brady. I think we have another number one contender who's ready to fight for the belt next. I know that Ian Gary's really upset that JDM's getting the shot, but last time I checked, Ian Gary didn't even fight for the interim title and lost against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm sorry, dude. You're losing against Shavkat. You're basically losing in a number one contenders fight. Sean Brady just won a number one contenders fight in the most dominant fashion against a former champion. So I think this guy's next in line for whoever wins the title. Maybe they'll give it to Shavkat, but either way, I don't think Sean Brady should fight anyone else other than the guy that's holding the belt next, because this is a guy that just lost the belt in Leon Edwards. And we'll talk about what's next for Leon. You know what I think would be good? Leon Edwards versus Ian Gary would be a good fight. That would be a good stand-up battle. But let's get on to the next one. Jan Blachowicz and Carlos Ulberg. I picked Jan Blachowicz. Had ourselves a close fight. I gave Jan Blachowicz the first round. And I actually predicted Jan would lose the first, win the next two. He won the first, lost the next two. And this is the fight where Jan is looking old, okay? Like, yeah, he looked okay. He didn't look completely washed. He's not like Stipe Miocic in there, but yeah, he was slow as fuck, man. I'm sorry, but Jan Blachowicz's punches, his reaction time when it comes to checking kicks, it's just not there anymore, okay? He's still good for a 42-year-old, still great, but this was an example of Jan losing to a guy in Carlos Ulberg who's good but not excellent because he's missing a step these days. Okay, this was truly the moment where Jan is declining. Again, the speed, it wasn't there. The reaction time, it wasn't there. And also just the physicality and you know how imposing he was. He was marching forward a little bit, but Carlos Ulberg, I mean, we rarely see people tee off on Jan. And Ulberg wasn't teeing off on him with punches, but third round, I know Jan was marching forward, but third round, Carlos Ulberg, for every strike that Jan landed, which would be like a leg kick every, 30 seconds, Carlos Ulberg would land 3, right? Carlos Ulberg would land 5 strikes for every one of Jan's. The activity was there for Ulberg. The speed was there for Ulberg. Nothing special. He didn't look like a striker this is the new wave of striker. This is the next level. It's just Jan looks slow as fuck. And his punches, again, slow. Reaction time wasn't there. In the first round, he was like jittering, like he was about to have a heart attack. And I rarely see that. Jan is usually the guy who's sort of slow in his stance. First round, he was like jittering like a jitterbug, like a Curtis Blades, dude. And I'm telling you right now, man, he did pretty well, but do not get this twisted, bro. Carlos Ulberg beat Jan Blachowicz, but Jan Blachowicz was old and he's getting washed. I wanted Jan to win. I'm a big Jan fan. I'm happy it wasn't a KO. I'm happy it wasn't truly like a masterclass. It was the case where if you make Jan Blachowicz 38 as opposed to 42, he's winning this one. You know what I mean? He's winning 30-27, 29-28, maybe getting the KO. Now that he's 4 years older, he's losing these types of matchups. Ulberg is good enough to where he can graze past an old, decaying Blachowicz, who's not as built different. You could truly see it. He looked frailer. I know he looked in pretty good shape, but he looked frailer. He looked skinnier. Again, not as composed. Timing, just not checking everything that's coming in his direction. It's that timing, man. And listen, I didn't want to say it before the fight, but I was working with Jan a little bit in the build up to this, and we were doing the drill where you're throwing the tennis balls at him, and I was clipping him with some of the tennis balls, man. And usually Jan would be able to swipe those away. So it is what it is. I was doing the fucking tennis ball game where you throw tennis balls at your training partner, to see if they can dodge them, and it wasn't as fast. Wasn't as fast, man. But yeah, this was kind of annoying to see. Because the thing is, and I said this, before this fight, I'm not the biggest Carlos Ulberg fan. And that's just because it's he's decent, but his fights aren't that entertaining. If he doesn't land the big left hook, he does just enough to get by. And his style is pretty basic, kicking and throwing a freaking jab every once in a while. No risks. He didn't take any risks in this fight. Just won it based on being a little bit speedy and a little bit younger, better footwork and more activity. The big ugly style only works when you're at least not washed. You got to at least, still have your built differentness, right? The kicks, man, this is the big thing. If Jan were to land 20 leg kicks on you a few years ago, you'd be screwed. You'd be toast. Jan landed at least 25 solid leg kicks, and Ulberg was moving just fine. So that's how he's just old now. So it is what it is. Sad to see. Ulberg gets by him barely. It's not a performance to write home about, but, it is what it is. Good for him. But, yeah, I'm a little bit salty that I had to watch Jan just, barely get outdone in the third. Just due to activity. Again, he, in my opinion, won the first round. Definitely won. But, again, the leg kicks just didn't have the same sting on him, right? We didn't see any moments where Carlos Ulberg was really moving badly on his feet. So it is what it is. A tough watch to see old man Jan get done like that. But it is what it is. It happens. On to the next one. Kevin Holland versus Gunnar. The 2014's Gunnar Nelson was able to push Kevin Holland. Normally, modern era fighters would completely destroy the 2014's fighters and make them look like 90s fighters. And I said Gunnar Nelson sort of was like a 90s fighter in there. But, he still pushed Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland won this on total strikes, got a big knockdown at the end of the first, but was still getting taken down at will, getting controlled a little bit. And it's just not a great look to be getting taken down left and right by a 90s Gunnar, right? Who's incredibly inactive. I know Gunnar's a good grappler, not the best wrestler, though. And he's very inactive. And I say he's like a 90s fighter. Obviously, Gunnar Nelson is competing today, and he's training today, but let's be honest, he's not really like the new evolution. Okay, neither is Kevin Holland, but Kevin Holland's sort of with the times a little bit. But still, it seems like it is sort of impressive that Kevin Holland didn't get submitted because he was put on the ground a bunch of times, and Gunnar Nelson's known for his ground game. So if you were to ask me before the fight, hey, if Gunnar Nelson takes him down 5 times, do you think he's going to dominate? I'd say, yeah, probably. But he didn't. So to be fair to Kevin Holland, that's actually pretty decent. Good win for Kevin Holland. Molly McCann, Alexia Tanara. Molly McCann retires, gets submitted against Alexia Tanara. Not a whole lot to talk about. I guess, these for sure 100% finish rate women's MMA fights are definitely going to be less common because Molly McCann is one of the few that every single time we see her fight, we see a finish every single time, no matter what happens in the first round, which is somewhat entertaining because I've always said the last thing you want to see in one of these type of fights is like a 3-round snooze fest, and Molly McCann is always saving us from that. And now we're not going to see her fight. So, hope she has a good time, man, in the retirement, but cards are going to go by slower. Jordan Vucenic versus Chris Duncan. I think Guram Kutateladze may be the most overrated UFC fighter of all time. I'm just going to say it. I know these days he's not rated that highly, but I'm talking about because it's basically all said and done. If you look at how people rated him back in the day, and he beat Jordan Vucenic, but Jordan Vucenic arguably beat Guram. We'll talk about it, but dude, Jordan Vucenic looked like a maestro against Guram. It's just that he lost the 3rd round, barely lost the fight. I guess they gave Guram the 2nd because he took it on short notice and sort of gassed out a little bit. But man, Chris Duncan, I said it. I said he's probably going to lose, but he's got that clubbing right hand, and he's got a good rear naked choke. Now, he didn't get the rear naked choke. What was the submission that he got again? I think he got the guillotine, which was interesting. We rarely see people get tapped in the lightweight division with guillotines. And Jordan Vucenic was shooting the takedown in the 2nd round, despite the fact that he was winning. But the point that I'm making is Jordan Vucenic looked so good against Guram. So fast, incredible boxing, kicking game. But what's that to a big clubbing right from Chris Duncan? Chris Duncan's always had a clubbing right. People were mad when I was saying that Tom Aspinall only has a clubbing right. I'm exaggerating. Of course, he looked like a fucking, maestro against Volkan. Not Volkan, dude, Volkov. Looked like a maestro on the feet. Was landing good combos and whatnot, but you get my point. Every single Tom Aspinall fight, he just lands a clubbing right. I know he's got more than that, bro, but I'm exaggerating a little bit. I don't know why people were like, oh my God, he said he only had a clubbing right. You guys are acting like we see Tom Aspinall throwing flying knees and spinning arm bars. No, dude. He's got great jiu-jitsu and good stand-up, but he's literally just landing a clubbing right. Either way, Chris Duncan's got a clubbing right. All right? And he's got a pretty good ground game. Jordan Vucenic's a great grappler too. But man, Chris Duncan continues to win. He's only got 1 loss in the UFC. And, he's having a lot of these good performances. He's proven a lot of people wrong. The only fight that he lost was to Manuel Torres, who was a marauder. So, that's always a chance when you're fighting Manuel Torres. But Jordan Vucenic, maestro against Guram, clubbing right, introduces himself to Jordan Vucenic, beats him, submits him. But yeah, Jordan Vucenic shot the takedown 2nd round when he started to get into the flow of things and just shot right into that freaking guillotine, man. Right into it. And, he's 0-2 in the UFC, bro. Looking like an absolute maestro. 0-2 now in the UFC. Good win for Chris Duncan. As we get on to Nathaniel Wood and Morgan Charriere, I said this was like a mirror matchup, but I said that Morgan Charriere was going to win because he had the power, and Nathaniel Wood is a little bit undersized for featherweight, doesn't hit that hard. But actually, it was the opposite in this one. Nathaniel Wood was the one that showed power in this one, knocked down Morgan Charriere in the 1st round, and had the only moment in the fight where he was able to hurt someone. And other than that, 2nd, 3rd round, just had the sweet pea special on command. It was just, good head movement, getting his head off the center line, sneaking in the jab, sneaking in the sweet pea. Great performance from Nathaniel Wood. Looked so fast, looked very crisp in this one. But again, I talked about it in the beginning of this video. There were lots of knockdowns in this fight, but, most of the time these guys were fumbling. Every time they got one, Nathaniel Wood sort of fumbled the finish. But either way, got himself a clear victory, clear 30-27. Morgan Charriere, his hands just aren't as good. He's got great kicks, got powerful hands, but Nathaniel Wood was clearly the better boxer. seemed to be the guy that was controlling the range better with his jab. Great victory for Nathaniel Wood. This honestly may have been his best performances in his entire career, given the level of opponent that he's fighting this time. Great performance from him. Chris Padilla versus Jai Herbert. I literally fell asleep while watching this fight. I'm sorry. This fight was bad. It could have been good in the second, third. I'm sorry I fell asleep. I said that Jai Herbert is no longer the same snooze fest fighter. He's no longer the same guy that's throwing toothpicks at range because he had a war with Rolando Bedoya. And I was like, you know what? Jai Herbert's entertaining now. First round, fainting, clinching. You know, toothpicks, punches, I'm sure Chris Padilla landed some big, nasty elbows. I guarantee you he did, because he won the fight. I fell asleep during this. I got to be honest. People are going to say, casual man, how you fall asleep during the war? It was Jai Herbert versus Chris Padilla. This one's going to go down in the history books. I'm sorry, bro. I fell asleep. All right? That's what I'm saying, man. Up until this point, this card was extremely boring. Okay? I fell asleep. And I think I woke up at the end of the third round after Chris Padilla landed some big, ugly elbows. So, good victory for Chris Padilla, but this was a classic Jai Herbert performance. This one was probably the fight of the night. Performance of the night was definitely Sean Brady. This was the fight of the night. Loughran Kavanagh versus Felipe dos Santos. I picked Felipe dos Santos. This was the last time I was going to pick him if I was going to see how he would do. I said that he hasn't recreated the performance he had against Manel Cap. I'm going to give him another chance. He looked really good in the first round, looked great, until Loughran Kavanagh took him down and just beat the shit out of him on the ground. Now, to give some credit to Felipe dos Santos, he was landing some good elbows on bottom, and he was doing all right, but Loughran Kavanagh, just nasty ground and pound. After he dominated the ground game at the end of the first round, his striking improved throughout the fight. He looked much faster, and just a great war. Very active grappling. We rarely see ground and pound like that in the lighter weight classes. So credit to Loughran Kavanagh making grappling very entertaining to watch. Great performance from him. As we get on to Marcin Tybura versus Mick Parkin. I picked Marcin Tybura, and he gets it done. All right? Mick Parkin, he was really worrying me in this one because Marcin Tybura went out there very unorthodox, swaying his hands and throwing, three-piece combos with the kick at the end of them, a lot of teeps up the middle, and Mick Parkin's out there. Mick Parkin's like a very dense version of, what's his name? I forget him. I think the guy that got KO'd like 5 times in a row. Chris Daukaus. He's like a dense Chris Daukaus. Okay? He's pretty decent. He's pretty good, right? He's pretty okay. And you know what? I'm going to give some credit to Tom Aspinall. Mick Parkin is a guy that's not very talented, that's come a long way, that still has an opportunity to be like, a guy in the top 10 for a while because of how hard he works and because of the team that he's with. So you got to give credit to Aspinall and the team. I truly believe that, again, Mick Parkin, he's not got the best speed. He's not got the greatest power. He's not the best athlete. Again, not the most talented guy, but he trains with a good team. And because of that, he's able to have a very close performance against Marcin Tybura in the beginning of his career. So I said in my prediction, we'll see if Tom Aspinall truly has this next level system. We always talk about, he trains with this guy. Like Abu Bakar trains with Habib. He was never good. All right. GSP had training partners. Okay. Like everybody that was ever, a great champion had training partners that aren't necessarily going to be great. But Tom Aspinall and his heavyweight team, they actually are, they've got a good formula going. When Mick Parkin is able to do pretty well. So I'm giving Mick Parkin some credit. But yeah, I got really worried because I said Marcin Tybura was going to destroy Mick Parkin on the ground. I was like, man, how is Mick Parkin making it so far? He's just sort of mediocre everywhere. He's just, again, mediocre everywhere, but doesn't make a lot of mistakes, very technical, and just does the basics. And that heavyweight, when everyone's so bad, like just the classic basics without making mistakes, if you're a little dense and you can stay on the feet to get past those guys that are one-dimensional grapplers, like you'll be able to make it far. And he got the takedown in the second, dude. Marcin Tybura is supposed to be the dangerous guy. It was getting really close to a finish for Mick Parkin. There was a moment where he was beating up Marcin Tybura on the ground with a flurry of ground and pound, big shots. I'm so happy the ref didn't step in, man. So happy the ref didn't step in. But I was shitting my pants. I was like, fuck, bro. Is Mick Parkin about to finish Marcin Tybura? And we get into the third. Marcin Tybura just goes out there and barely outstrikes Mick Parkin. He did outstrike Mick Parkin. He did outland Mick Parkin. In my opinion, it was clear that he landed like 5 or 6 more strikes. And I was watching very closely in the third round, tallying up every strike. Mick Parkin did pretty well, but Marcin Tybura, unorthodox, right? Like Mick Parkin would land a couple of good jabs, and then Marcin Tybura would land a kick and a leg kick and, you know, a weird back fist off the break of a clinch. And then he failed the takedown at the end of it. No ground game for Marcin Tybura. I believe if he were to get Mick Parkin down, he would have got the finish, but he didn't. Actually, it was Mick Parkin who took him down first. So very close fight, but Marcin Tybura holds it down. Marcin Tybura, very good. And this was not a great performance for Marcin, by the way. This was bad performance from him, but he was still able to just barely win. But I think Mick Parkin will be back, and I think he'll be a top 10 guy, but I think we're sort of seeing like, yeah, this is like pretty much the level because, Marcin Tybura is not known for his striking, okay? And he won this fight based on the striking alone because it was actually Parkin that dominated the ground game. This was such a bad fight. This was so shit, man. Andre Pulyaev versus Christian Leroy Duncan. Now, I picked Christian Leroy Duncan to dominate this fight. He did. But there was just way too much clinching, man. Like, Christian Leroy Duncan would land an incredible combination in the first round, just styling on Andre Pulyaev, and then he would just smudge Pulyaev in the fence for like 4 minutes and ruin the rest of the round. Same thing in the third. It's like he's clearly way better than Pulyaev. There's no threat coming from Pulyaev whatsoever other than a head kick once in a while, which, Christian Leroy Duncan is hip to. And it's like he chooses to just fucking smudge him into the fence when clearly it's at range where he's dominating. It wasn't even Pulyaev who was going for the clinch. It was Duncan. And the thing that really annoyed me is that he did the Strickland at the end of the fight. You know how Strickland does it, where it's like he finally throws down like a marauder in the last 10 seconds. At the last 10 seconds, Christian Leroy Duncan in the clinch beats the shit out of Andre Pulyaev and almost finishes him. In the clinch, that is. Up against the fence. Which goes to show that he could have done that at any time of the fight where he's pushing Pulyaev into the fence and doing nothing. All of a sudden, last 20 seconds, he can actually dominate from that position. So just, this was a terrible fight. It was so boring to watch. And, at the last 20 seconds, he showed us that actually he could have made it entertaining the whole time. But it is what it is. Good win from Christian Leroy Duncan. Shauna Bannon versus Puja Tomar, most entertaining fight on the card, except for, of course, Loughran, Kavanagh, and Felipe dos Santos. This was a good fight. Lots of side kicks. Puja Tomar, I have never seen this many low groin strike claims in a women's MMA fight. Obviously, we saw Puja Tomar kick Shauna Bannon low. But Shauna Bannon in the second round kept gesturing to the ref that she was getting kicked in the groin, which wasn't happening at all. But then Puja Tomar goes upstairs, lands a head kick. I'm 100% convinced that Shauna Bannon is about to get KO'd, like she's out of it. The ref lets her survive, and she pulls it off. She gets an armbar, taps out Puja Tomar, gets one of the best comeback victories that I've seen in WMMA. So great victory for Shauna Bannon. Tough for Puja Tomar, but this was a pretty entertaining fight. I got to say it. It's crazy how, to be fair, Molly McCann versus Alexia Tyner wasn't, that was a submission, but it wasn't that entertaining. But, bro, these fights were rough, okay? If this was, the most entertaining one. But, objectively a good finish. Nathan Fletcher versus Caolan Loughran. A lot of people are upset about this one. This was clear. I picked Caolan Loughran, okay? To be fair, I'm going to take that back. It wasn't clear. But Caolan Loughran easily won the first round. There's no debate. Caolan Loughran outstruck Nathan Fletcher in the first round. He was outboxing him. He was in making Nathan Fletcher miss, fading away from the punch and, landing his own counter shots, right hands over the top, the stubby punches. He was landing those. He won the first round. The reason why I think that people were saying this was a brutal robbery is because Nathan Fletcher dominated the second. So you're watching the first round, it's kind of close. Now Nathan Fletcher dominates the second. And you're like, well, now Nathan Fletcher's really in control. And if we have a close third round, you're just going to give it to Nathan Fletcher because he has more of the mental momentum. But third round, Caolan Loughran takes Nathan Fletcher's back, controls him for a couple minutes. Then, as he said in this post-fight interview, robbed him. He took him down left and right over and over and over again. And the one argument that could be made for Nathan Fletcher is that at the last 30 seconds, he started teeing off on Caolan Loughran up against the fence and landed a spinning back fist and even cut him open a little bit with an elbow. But it's like 4.5 minutes of the round, and I understand he did the damage there. 4.5 minutes of the round was Caolan Loughran. And Caolan Loughran still landed a couple of punches at the end of the third. I'm not going to say this is a robbery, but it wasn't totally clear. I will at least say that. It wasn't totally clear. It was a tough third round to score. You're going to go with the constant pressure, domination in the grappling from Caolan Loughran, or are you going to go with the, damage? But again, it's not like Caolan Loughran just came up with no punches in the third. He landed a couple of punches in that sequence. So they gave it to Caolan Loughran. Listen, man, I thought that he has a good argument to win it as well. It's like, the argument for Nathan Fletcher is really a 20-second moment. It's not like he dropped Caolan Loughran. It's not like he hurt him that badly. He just landed a couple of big strikes. But yeah, it was a close fight. I'm not going to say this is a robbery, though. And now we get to Guram Kutateladze versus Quay Fernandez. This was like watching a comedy scene in a comedy movie with, as I said, like overly dramatic instrumental opera music. Oh, I'm not going to do it out loud, but it's like, oh, it's like, dude, I'll explain what I mean. Like, oh, I can't do it, bro. I can't do it. Think about like all these comedy movies, like these cheesy comedy movies from like the 2000s. There's always like a scene. It's like, they're at a wedding and someone slips on a banana peel and, the momentum of their fall triggers the wedding cake to shoot up in the air. And the wedding cake is like flying over towards the bride's face, about to smash into her face. And during that sequence, there's like, instrumental music, like super intense. And there's like a dog floating in the air that got, catapulted by the table as well. And the dog is like fucking flying somewhere. This is how it felt while watching Guram Kutateladze every single time he took a fall. Like, first round, he gets head kicked. Okay? Quay Fernandez goes out there. He's piecing up Guram. Guram Kutateladze gets head kicked in the first round. Falls down, okay? It's like, I always talked about how Guram's problem was that he always went out there and just button mashed. He sort of just spammed wheel kicks and, really fancy techniques. And he would spam like fancy takedown attempts. But he wouldn't actually put anything on the takedown. He wouldn't really impose his will. He would just button mash. But there was no strategy. There was no like, I'm going for this thing. I'm marching forward and I'm going to fuck him up in the clinch. Or I'm going to get the takedown and move from point A to point B. All right? This time, Guram was like the complete opposite. He was like the super defensively sound. I'm going to walk you down. I'm just going to walk you down, march you down. I'm going to prove a point. But he went too far in that direction where he wasn't throwing anything. All right? But let me get back to the point. So the second round, Quay Fernandez is out there just piecing him up. And then he kicks Guram. And Guram falls, dude. He knocks Guram down with a leg kick. And then the third round, this was like the moment in like one of these comedy movies where like the cake, it hits the bride's face and like the wedding's ruined. And then, it pans over to the dog and like someone catches the dog and it's like, oh, that's a cute moment. Someone caught the dog. If you guys know what I'm saying, you fucking know what I'm saying, all right? If you're like completely oblivious to what I'm talking about, you're just going to think this is like ridiculous. What are you even yapping about? But the equivalent to that was when Quay Fernandez kicked Guram off of his feet. And there's Guram, like former world champion. Not literally, but like people used to talk about Guram as like a future world champ. People were saying back in the day, like, bro, At any moment, no one would be surprised if Guram was fighting for a belt. Like, people used to talk about this guy as if, like, Arman Tsarikian falls out of the Makhachev fight and Guram would be the obvious choice. And this dude was like 1-1 back in the day. So Quay Fernandez kicks Guram off of his feet. And not only that, dude. Guram's on his back. He just got kicked off of his feet. He just got dropped for the third time in this fight. And all of a sudden, a cut opens up on Guram's forehead. There was no elbow. There was no punch. The MMA gods were so done with Guram. They decided to open up a cut on his forehead out of nowhere. And then you see Ilia Topuria facepalm, dude. And that signifies the wedding cake hitting the bride's face and the wedding being over. Essentially, Guram's career just taking the biggest downward turn. And unfortunately, kind of being done as, like, looked at as a guy that has a chance. Like, Ilia Topuria literally had everyone's reaction. Like, he saw Guram go down with the leg kick, and then he sees the cut open up on Guram's forehead, the ghost cut coming out of nowhere, and it's like, okay, fuck. Like, dude, like, it literally couldn't go any worse for a former hyped-up prospect. But I actually like Guram. He's a relatively entertaining fighter. You see him hanging out with Topuria and Merab. He's Team Georgia, training with Hamzat. You know, you saw him with Hamzat back in the day when Hamzat was doing the vlogs with Darren Till. Guram was like, you know, part of the team. And now Guram, you know what it is? Guram is like a guy. I said this in my prediction video. I said Guram's sort of like, he's got like the physique of someone that's like highly overtrained and underfed. He's got like this very stringy, long distance runner muscle, and like every performance has gotten significantly worse, and he's looked less imposing in every single one. Where if you look at his whole career, it's like one big marathon. You get more tired as it goes on, and you go from having a fucking war with Mateusz Gamrot and not a masterclass, but like a high level looking fight with Damir Ismagulov to getting like completely destroyed by Quay Fernandez, whose best win is over what's his name again? Like Muhammad Yahya, and he lost to Mark Jacasey. It's actually really tough. I hate to see it. Guram actually arguably won the third round. I'm going to say that. He arguably was winning the third round. He actually started to get going. He was starting to piece up Quay Fernandez in the third. I will say that. But then he got dropped with the kick, and then the fucking cut opened up on his forehead. Like, literally just watch the third round. There's no cut on Guram's head. No cut. He gets dropped with the kick, and all of a sudden he's leaking all over the place. And then look at Ilia Topuria. Ilia's like, dude, how is this happening, man? So, very unfortunate. I wanted Guram to win. I picked him to win this one. I was thinking, you know, people have overrated him, but he'll be good enough to be able to beat Quay Fernandez, but no. Crazy. I didn't do so well on this card, though. Definitely got the main event wrong, that's for sure. Again, I picked Leon Edwards because I said, listen, Bilal, I think he's more built different than Brady, and Brady's a great grappler, but I don't know if he's as good of a wrestler. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep up the same pace and have as, you know, gritty of a style as Bilal on the feet, but he did just that. Got to give Sean Brady the credit because he was able to implement the same game plan, which is a dog fight on the feet with Leon. That's how you got to fight him, especially if you're the less rangy, shorter guy. You got to get in his face and bite down on the mouthpiece and throw. He did that, and didn't get discouraged after missing a couple of the takedowns in the first round. Kept going for it, eventually got it, and we haven't seen a dominant masterclass on the ground like that in a long time at welterweight. Yeah, not the best card. We had to see Jan Blachowicz lose. You know, that was kind of tough. But yeah, interesting main event. Very dominant main event. Sean Brady has a breakout performance. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time.